dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Sith Talk. Today is January 1st, 2024. We are on the new channel right now, and my guest is Konnor from Beyond the Dune Sea. How you doing, Konnor?
I'm doing very well, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So tell us a little bit about your channel and where we could find you at.
Okay, so yeah, my name's Konnor. I am one of two hosts of the Beyond the Dune Sea show. You can find us at Beyond the Dune Sea pretty much everywhere except Twitter. We don't have a Twitter. I don't know why. We don't have a Twitter. But TikTok, Instagram, and of course the main show is on YouTube and Spotify. So yeah, it's
Yes.
we talk Star Wars, mostly Star Wars. Maybe on occasion we'll dabble outside that galaxy far, far away, but you know, for the most part.
Yeah. Nice. And it's funny. I was just talking to Seth and I was telling him how I found you guys was on TikTok. I remember seeing a random TikTok and I was like, man, the quality of this is crazy. They have to be like 100K channel. Like I've never seen these dudes, but like the quality was there. And like that next day, Will from Diamond Figs on Instagram, he sent me a reel on IG and I'm like, bro, I just was watching these guys. They're awesome. And like we went from that to now we're all friends. We have
Yeah, isn't
Tales
that
of the
crazy?
Archive together. Yeah, it's so crazy how it works. It's like such a small world. It's wild.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, you have just been awesome with kind of mentoring Seth and I with YouTube because we're YouTube novices. Like, hey, I've been in video production in one form or another for a very long time, but
Yeah.
YouTube is still kind of a mystery to me. And gosh, I mean, we wouldn't be anywhere close to where we're at without you and all the other friends we've made, but especially you because you've been like, oh yeah, this is how this works, or this
Yeah.
stuff about this, you know. And we appreciate that so much.
No, of course. Yes. So everyone that comes on the show, we get 3 questions out of them. Are you ready for the first
Oh,
question?
let's hear it.
So the first one is, what is your favorite Star Wars movie?
Easy. Revenge of the Sith,
Yes.
episode 3. Not
Why
even a
Revenge of the
question.
Sith?
Why Revenge of the Sith? So I became a fan just before that movie came out.
Hmm.
And I was a little older already. I had experience of Star Wars, but it didn't click with me for whatever reason. But I discovered the original trilogy on an
Hmm.
old VHS tape. And it would just happen to be the end of 2004 when that happened. And so then Revenge of the Sith was right there. And I went to the drive-in with my sister. And gosh, what a just incredible movie. Like incredible time to become a fan because then you get the end of the saga, which it had the marketing, you know, with the toys and with the commercials. And there was that Burger King tie-in that I thought was so cool. I actually have
Yes.
it's over there. It's a little out of reach, but I have the Darth Vader on our set. It's actually Seth's, but he brought it over
Yeah.
for our set. But as I got older, I grew to love Empire more. So
Hmm.
Empire was my favorite until I was in college. I had some friends who had never seen Star Wars. One of my friends was from India, and he had never seen anything, and they didn't know anything. And so we're like,
Wow.
"Hey, let's get together, you guys and some of my other friends who had already seen Star Wars, and like we're just gonna have a big marathon. We're gonna watch all 6 movies." And we ended it on Revenge of the Sith, and just experiencing it. It was like experiencing it for the first time again,
Yeah.
and it's like seeing it from their eyes was so cool. And also um, being able to I'd never done that. I'd never done a marathon to Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, everything really builds to this movie.
Yeah.
And everything, the emotion, the story. And I was like, wow, no, this is it. You know, George was cooking, you know, we just had to.
He was.
So yeah,
Did
it'll
did
always be
you
my favorite.
did you say you watched Revenge of the Sith at a drive-in for the
I
first
did.
time?
I did.
Really?
Yes.
What?
We,
So I've never been to a drive-in theater before, but like, what was
oh,
that experience watching Revenge of the Sith in a drive-in?
so there's a drive-in that was near my hometown,
Uh-huh.
somewhat small drive-in, but it was kind of it was always a special thing to do. Like with my family, my mom would often go. We actually had a tradition every Thanksgiving we would go watch the new Harry Potter movie because
Oh,
they came out
nice.
on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And so most of the time that would be something I did with my dad, but then my mom, she would take us to the drive-in often to see those as well. And so it was always a special thing. And for Revenge of the Sith, yeah, it was kind of like any other drive-in movie that I'd been to. You kind of, if you've never been, you pull up, there's, instead of theater seats, obviously you have your cars and you tune your radio to a certain station. And then that's how you hear
Mm.
the audio. And so it kind of, your experience really depended on how good a sound system you had.
Yeah.
Um, I'm embarrassed to say I was a little devious in my high school years. We would sneak into the drive-in and then just sit next to people with loud cars. um, but no, for Revenge of the Sith, I went with my sister, and I think with my sister and her boyfriend at the time,
Mhm.
and I just sat in the back, because another fun thing you did if it was summertime, which this was May,
Mhm.
uh, you back your car in, and then you kind of lift your tailgate if you have a hatchback, and you kind of just like create a little nest in there, some pillows
Mm.
and blankets and snacks
Yeah.
and stuff. Specs, you're not really supposed to bring in snacks, but everybody did anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, it was great. I mean, you miss out on what I would call theater experiences where people are cheering, and there's
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
applause
yeah.
lines and stuff, but you get a much more, it's a different experience. It's a much more homey experience because,
Yeah.
you're in your own element, you're in your own car. Usually you've got your own food, you've got your own people, and you can talk
Yeah.
because you don't have to worry about being quiet, but everything's really loud, and it was great. It was great to experience that movie that way. Uh, yeah, some days I wish that I would have watched it in a theater, but also just that experience of my most prominent memory, I don't know why, is of General Grievous from that movie. Like I have just a prominent image in my mind of General Grievous up on that big screen.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's so cool. I remember seeing Revenge of the Sith in theaters like it was yesterday because I remember I was in college at the time. I was living in Daytona and I had a part-time job somewhere. And I remember me and then like the two older dudes at the job wanted to see it too because they were OGs that watched the original. So we went. We got out of work at 10. We went on Thursday because we saw it Thursday at midnight. So I remember we got out of work at 10. We went across the street to the AMC in Daytona, and we waited till midnight to watch it. And we saw the midnight show, and it was amazing. And then as soon as we came out, we're in the parking lot, like vroom, 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 like playing with like
Right.
lightsabers. It just was such an amazing movie, and I will never forget that experience seeing it because back then you had to wait till midnight if you wanted to see it early on
Yeah.
Thursday,
Yep.
and we were the first ones in there, and it was just great. Like that's my favorite movie too, and it's crazy to this day. I just rewatched it like 2-3 weeks ago. To this day, it still hits so hard and feels so good
Yep.
every time you rewatch it. It's amazing. I still get that feeling so many years later rewatching it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I will stumble upon clips, and with doing the show, I often am pulling clips or rewatching clips a lot. And yeah, it's like no matter how many times I watch it, they're like, just the other day I was pulling some clips from the Mace Windu versus Palpatine. And when
Mm,
Palpatine's on the ground, and the unlimited power,
power.
that is just,
Yeah, yeah.
gosh, I mean, Ian McDermott is the unsung hero of that movie in particular. Like man, what a performance. And like that scene, I love that scene so much. So yeah, I agree. It's like every time I see a scene from that movie or I watch that movie, it hits just as hard as it did the day I watched it for the first time.
Yep, so awesome. So the next question is what is your favorite Star Wars show? Only one, live action or animated. You gotta what's the top one?
Oh, well, it's Obi-Wan. That's what it is. My hot take.
Oh,
No, that's not it. That's not it. Although I do love that show. Something that I get clowned on a little bit for, but you know
yeah.
what? I don't care. I like it. But no, my favorite, probably Clone Wars. Yeah, I think the highs of Clone Wars are some of the highest, if not the highest of any show. So like the way I
Mhm.
always like my brain works when it comes to looking at especially shows, but movies as well. Like I use this phrase a lot, peaks and valleys. So
Yep. Yep.
Everything's got a peak, and then there are some low points, right? Clone Wars, it is vast.
Oh yeah.
You get Siege of Mandalore, but then you also get R2D2 and that frog that go across that desert for 4 episodes. It is a vast array of what you get.
Yeah.
But man, those peaks though are
Yeah.
peak. Like Siege of Mandalore is S tier Star Wars, and I don't say that lightly. Like, I'm pretty
Yeah.
picky about what I put in that category, and I love that. I mean, you have Yoda in the Wills, you have the Mortis arc, of course.
Mortis.
You have Obi-Wan going undercover, like when he took that polyjuice potion, and then
Yeah.
became that bounty
Yeah.
hunter.
Yes.
Like, that's great. The
Fives,
Bad Batch
man.
arc. Oh, of course. I mean, that is like the
Mm.
arc, right? The
Mm.
Fives arc. 99,
Oh,
the
I love
Umbara
99.
arc. I mean, I could go on and on. I love,
Yeah.
and I love what that did for Star Wars. A lot of people say, that, well, Clone Wars fixed the prequels for them. I'm not one of those people. I think the prequels
Mm.
stand very well on their own. I don't think you need Clone Wars to tell the story of Anakin's fall. I think
No.
it's done just fine in the movies. It's nice to have those extra moments, of course, but for me, where Clone Wars shines is expanding. You get Maul, you get Ahsoka, you get the personalities of
Yeah.
the clones, and it's weird to say, but like Anakin and Obi-Wan aren't really my favorite characters in that show, even though they're my favorite characters from the prequel era.
Yeah. For the Clone Wars, I wouldn't say it fixed it, but for me, it enhanced the prequels because
Yeah,
it just gave so much more depth and backstory. And it's funny, I was so late to Clone Wars. I didn't watch Clone Wars until after season 6 finished.
me
So
too.
yeah, so it's funny though, the reason I started, it was 2018. I'm watching Solo in the movie theaters, and I get to the end of the movie, and Darth Maul is on the screen, and I'm like, "You got cut in half. How are you here?" So as soon as I got out of the theater, I Googled it, like, "How is Darth Maul alive?" And I saw Dave Filoni brought him back in Clone Wars show, and I'm like, "I guess I gotta watch Clone Wars and Rebels because it said that he was in Clone Wars and Rebels." So I binged all 6 seasons of Clone Wars, all 4 seasons of Rebels, and I was like, "Wow, I really missed out on all this amazing lore content." And then for season 7, I watched that week to week as it dropped.
Me too, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very similar. I watched the '08 movie when it came out in theaters, but I was kind of just at that age where, I don't know, I was like, it was probably where I cared about Star Wars the least. It's not that I didn't care about it. It's
Yeah,
just I
yeah.
had other things going on.
Yep.
And we also didn't have cable at my house for a very, very long time. So I just didn't have any way to watch it. And
Mhm.
I was never really on the internet during that time either. It was weird. So I just wasn't exposed to it. And then
Yeah.
it was college for me. Um, the 6 seasons, I think the 6th season had just wrapped, or maybe it would wrap. It was whenever they got put on, uh, they were on Netflix for a
Yeah,
while.
it was on Netflix,
Yeah.
yeah. I think I might have watched it on Netflix because there was
Yeah.
no Disney Plus, or maybe Disney
Right.
Plus just came out then, but I think I watched it on Netflix.
Disney Plus came out the same year as Mando. So yeah, it would have had to have been,
Oh, yeah,
it would,
2018, you're right. It was
it would had to have
2019 was
been
Mando.
It would have had to have been Netflix. So I binged them all on Netflix, same as you.
Yep.
And I had the same thing. I'm not gonna lie, season 1 is a bit of a slog at
Oh,
points.
the first 2 are slow, 3 is when
Yeah.
it picks up.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And there's just such great moments, and I just very fond of Clone Wars.
Yeah, and
So
it's funny for people who say it's a kids show, and I'm watching the episode where Darth Maul is on a planet. There's a bunch of kids, and he slaughters all of them to lure out Kenobi. Like, this is not a kid show. Like, this
well,
show is
I mean, Star Wars are kids movies, but just
yeah,
because
yeah,
something's a kid movie or a kids show doesn't mean it's not good. I've never understood
exactly.
that as
Yep.
like a
Yeah,
attack on these. It's like, well, of course they are, but so is a bunch of other stuff we adults enjoy. It's
yeah,
made for everybody. It's kind of an all ages thing. It's not really a kids show versus a not kids show. Yeah, at least that's
exactly.
how I look at it.
So the next question, the last one is, who's your favorite Star Wars character?
Dude, this changes all the time.
Yeah.
But it is almost always between 2 characters,
Uh-huh.
and it's either Luke Skywalker or Anakin Darth Vader, which I know is the most vanilla answer I could give. But I think a lot of days it's Luke. Vader, of course, is just, he has the most complete arc. And I think of all characters, I think his story of redemption is so powerful to me.
Yep.
Um, you get so much depth with the character and his tragedy, and like building up, like I said, Revenge of the Sith. It's like, man, you've grown to love this person, and to watch him fall is so hard. But then that's what makes it so much sweeter that he comes back. And so I love that character, obviously. But Luke, I love Luke in a lot of different ways. I think that Luke is so interesting in that he's not your typical hero, especially not from that age, from the 80s and 70s. He was more of an old school fantasy character.
Yeah.
And he takes on a lot of those characteristics. And one thing, there's a video essay out there by a channel called So Uncivilized, called The Importance of Luke Skywalker. I highly recommend any Star Wars fan watch that. It is so good. But he breaks down how in A New Hope, Luke has a typical hero's journey. And he's the prodigal son, out, and he gets taken on. He's the apprentice of an old wizard who gives him a magic sword. They go to the Dark Tower to fight the Dark Wizard and save the princess. Like that's the story.
Yeah.
And it's pretty basic. But then you get to Empire, and instead of making Luke repeat the hero's journey, everything that made him strong in A New Hope makes him lose in Empire Strikes Back. And it's the lesson he has to learn, that to be a Jedi and to be a hero sometimes aren't the same thing. And that's so powerful to me about like patience and about persistence, but also Luke is loyal. He's loyal to a fault. He's steadfast, and his loyalty is what gets him and his friends in danger, and learning how to balance that. And, then we get to Return of the Jedi, and I think it's easy to forget because we know Luke so well just because he's so prevalent in media. But if you picture yourself at the time watching Return of the Jedi for the first time, when Luke walks through those doors in Jabba's palace, you're like, where's this guy at? He's wearing all black. He's force choking the guard. Did he become his father like he was worried about? Because that's the strength of the I am your father moment, is Luke is always saying, hey, I'm going to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father. So as soon as Vader says, I am your father, that destiny is staring him in the face. Like, oh my gosh, what I've been working for is that.
Yeah.
And so when we see him in Return of the Jedi, it's such a great moment because you're like, oh no, is he Vader now? Like, not literally, but is he, becoming that character? And then the beautiful moment at the end when he throws it away. Gosh, what a powerful moment. And then I love just the visual symbolism of his costume. The flap comes down and you get the light.
Yep.
So I think that character is such a powerful story, and it's such a timeless story. And I think it's something that anybody can watch and get something from it. So yeah, Luke most days is my favorite, but on other days it's Anakin. But right now it's Luke.
So when we got Luke in Mando season 2 finale for the first time, what were you thinking in that moment? How did you feel? Because I know for me that was such a special moment, and I will never forget it. But what was it like for you seeing Luke in Mando?
So I have because I've been involved in film production for a long time, I can kind of, twists are rarely a surprise to me because you can kind of, when I watch something, it's a blessing and a curse. And anybody who's involved in storytelling or production, has the same issue, but you can sort of pick up the breadcrumbs. And when I watch, I'm like, oh, well, they did this because of this behind the scenes reason that you can sort of piece together. And then when stuff comes out later, whether it's a gallery episode or interviews, usually it's vindicated. Like, oh yeah, that thing that I thought was true, So with that background in mind, going through Mando season 2, in the beginning, they're talking about bringing him to a Jedi. Oh, it's going to be Ahsoka. We knew that from leaks, right? So yeah, he goes to Ahsoka, and then it was quite a surprise that she's like, nah, I'm not going to do it. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, you've now written yourself into a corner. Like, you had the perfect answer to your problem. It was Ahsoka. I mean, and Dave Filoni's involved, so it's like this is the answer to the question of who's going to train Grogu. Well, now it's who else is it going to be? And I remember Cal Kestis was a big person, which please know, I love Cal Kestis, but he needs to be dead by this time. It's too many Jedi. When Yoda said, "When gone am I, the last of the Jedi will you be?" They got away with the loophole with Ahsoka with the "I am no Jedi" thing, and Ezra's out on Peridia. So anyway, so I was like, well, if it's not Ahsoka, then Mace Windu was brought up a lot. Did he survive? Is he a dark Jedi at this point? You know, there was that question. But as the season kept going, I'm like, they are writing themselves into a Luke-shaped corner. And it was so peculiar to me because it just felt like there's no way they would touch this. There's no way that a TV show, there's no way that The Mandalorian would touch Luke Skywalker. It just, even though every narrative sign was pointing in that direction, I was like, there's just no way. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And then we get to that finale. And I remember my wife and I got up at 3 a.m. to watch it. And she doesn't do that for all of them, but she's pretty invested in The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And we sat down and we were kind of giving our last minute predictions. And I was like, you know, I think it is going to be Luke, but I didn't expect him to be in it. I expected them to do a teaser like they did in season 1, you know, with Moff Gideon and the Darksaber. It's like a stinger.
Yeah.
So I expected it to end with maybe you just see him step into frame and you see this hilt hanging off his belt. You know, and then like, oh, where's this going to go? That's the cliffhanger. That's what I expected at most. And so while watching it, I was loving it so far. You know, we're getting the fight between Moff Gideon and Din.
Yeah.
Bo-Katan and the gang going through and just, you know, ripping everybody apart. I love how it opens with the Slave One chasing the Imperial shuttle. And then we get to sort of what I assumed was the climax, but then it's not, just that X-Wing. And I remember just my heart dropped. I was like, no. And then I was like, but no, it's not him though, right? Like it's not Luke. Obviously, they're not going to do that. And then you see him walking down the hallway, and I'm like, okay. I don't know, the black cloak, anybody could be under that cloak.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you see the green lightsaber. I'm like, okay, it could be Ezra. It could be. We don't know. And then you see the hilt. And then I was like, it hit me so hard because I'm like, they're really doing this. I cannot believe that. And then the hallway. And it was like, my hero's back. And look, I'm not one of those people that like, I don't need to see Luke be a superhero. You know, I don't need that. Right. But it was, I think that as Star Wars fans by this point, at least this is how I felt, that we just didn't get that kind of stuff. You know, like they really danced around even saying Anakin's name. They didn't actually in that season. They talked about him in reference sort of with the Ahsoka episode. But like if it was a reference to legacy characters, that was all it was. It was a reference. If we're going to get Darth Vader in Rogue One, it was brief. It was that hallway scene. Great. I love it. But it doesn't go beyond that. So to see Luke get to be an actual character in a show, it blew my mind. It blew my mind that they did that. And I thought they built it so well because even with Luke, he's not the emotional center of that episode. It's Din saying goodbye to Grogu.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, you guys not only did the impossible, you brought Luke Skywalker in, but you made me care about a character that's not Luke Skywalker more in this episode, which that is a feat. That's I remember Lawrence Kasdan, he did write, I think, Force Awakens. And he talked about, that's why Luke's not in that, because if Luke is in it with our other heroes, you don't care about Rey, Finn, and Poe.
Yep.
And so it's a smart choice because they did the same thing in The Mandalorian. You had the full season. First season was all our new characters.
Yeah.
And then they started to trickle in those other guys in season 2 once you already cared. So it's interesting. But yeah, that's how I kind of got off on a tangent there. But that's I loved it. Loved that season.
That is awesome. And my experience was very similar too. So I woke up at 3 a.m. and I remember watching it in my living room. And when the X-Wing came in, like kind of like you, I'm like, there's no way. Like, there's no way. And then you see him walking down the hallway, and I'm like, okay, he looks kind of slender. Maybe it's just Ahsoka. Maybe it's just Ahsoka and an X-Wing. And then you see the glove, the lightsaber, and I still didn't believe it. I'm like, is this Luke? So I remember getting up off my couch, walking up to my TV and just staring like, oh my God, who is that? Who is that? And just seeing everything. And I'm like, is this really Luke Skywalker? And then the hallway scene was crazy. He crushed the droid. I was like, whoa. And then when he comes in and he deignites his blade and then he takes that off and you see him, I was just like shocked, shocked, blown away. And then like all of that was amazing, but I think one of the smaller parts that got me the most was R2 coming in
Yes.
out of nowhere. I think I started to tear up like, "Oh my god, R2 is there." And like that final shot that you see with Luke holding Grogu and R2 in the elevator, it's like if I would have saw that photo a year ago, I would have been like, "That's so fake. That would never happen ever."
Right.
But
Yeah.
but seeing that, it was like, "Wow, that really happened." And like you're right, that one part when Din took it off, it was I was getting choked up. It was so deep, so emotional. Him saying bye to the little guy. That episode, like we don't get stuff like that often where you feel that
No.
way and you remember like how everything that happened in that exact moment. And I
Right.
love when we get moments like that. Like I appreciate stuff like that so much.
Yeah. There's a lot of people like to say that's fan service, but I think that's fan service done right.
Yep.
There's a YouTube reviewer that I really like. I've said this on our show many times, but his name's Chris Stuckman. I'm sure many people have heard of him. But he has a great quote when talking about fan service. He's like, "I'm a fan, service me."
Yeah, right?
It's like, right. I mean, there's a way to do it where it's just nonsense for the sake of it, right? But there's also ways to do it like that. Yeah, like Luke is a main character in this galaxy. Makes sense that he would maybe pop in from time to time, especially if you write yourself into a corner where only he can save you.
Yeah, and like you said, at that time, everyone was like, "Well, who else is alive? It's only Luke. There's Cal. There's Ezra." It was literally just like three people that are in the galaxy right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, that was great. What about when he popped up in Book of Boba for that one episode?
I have very mixed feelings because
Yeah.
if you like in a vacuum, I love that episode.
Oh
I think
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
really good. It's some of those two episodes of Book of Boba Fett.
We're the best.
They're excellent.
Yeah.
The reason why I have reservations is I do not like that Grogu goes back to Mando.
Oh yeah. Terrible. Too quick. Terrible. 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 Way too
It
fast.
really detracted from that emotional
Yep.
core of season 2, in my opinion. So that is a big black spot on that show because overall with Book of Boba Fett, I think it's fine. I think it's inoffensive for the most part.
Hmm.
There's some stuff that I really don't care for, but I mean, but I don't think that it did anything where I'm like, wow, this is an affront to the lore, or something.
Yeah.
It's just some things really fell flat, which there's a difference, right? In my opinion, anyway, between being uh offensive. When I say offensive, like offensive to the lore of the universe
Yeah.
you're making. So there's a difference between being offensive and just being bad, like not very good. And I think that there's some stuff that's not very good in that show. But those two episodes, gosh, when it in the desert comes a stranger, I think is what that episode's called. I mean, the deep faking looked really good. I'm kind of in
Yep.
the camp that they should probably recast now, but I mean,
Yeah.
just for that
Yeah.
episode, hearing Mark and the BTS, delivering those lines, uh, seeing Cad Bane, seeing like everything about that episode was like Luke was perfect. Like his characterization was perfect. How
Yeah.
he was teaching Grogu. He was so humble too. Like when Ahsoka was like, he's learning so fast, and he's like, I don't even know if I'm teaching him anything or if he's just remembering things.
Yeah.
Uh, like that's just all very Luke to me. Like that's the character that I remember growing up with and loving. Like that's the guy. So I I love those episodes, but then I get really frustrated when I get to the finale.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I'm on the same page. But one thing in that episode though that like blew my mind when she said it was when Ahsoka said to Luke, you're so much like your father. Like right away, I was like, and then all the Clone Wars episodes flash back in my mind of her and Anakin. And after that moment, it's like I need to see in some sort of media or book, I need to see Ahsoka meeting Luke for the first time, and I
Yes.
want to see that conversation where Ahsoka's like, "Your father was my master," and Luke's like, "Your master was my father." I need to see when that happened, the realization of it, and I've talked about it before with a couple people on the podcast and stuff. I feel like it's gonna be R2D2 is the reason why that happens, because like, if Luke is with R2 and Ahsoka is somewhere and she sees R2, R2 is gonna recognize her right away. That would be the link connecting them to have, like, an initial conversation, you know?
Yeah, that is the tippy top of my Star Wars wish list. Like I've
Yeah.
joked about this before, but if we got that scene, I'm fine with Star Wars just ending. Or or anything with like the Skywalker stuff, because it just wraps everything up in a nice bow. Like
Yes.
it takes Clone Wars, it takes the original trilogy, it takes the prequel trilogy, it takes all the stuff they're doing in the Mando timeline, and it just full circles everything.
Yeah.
And oh, I want that scene so bad. And Dave mentioned actually for Book of Boba Fett that he wrote how they met in order to write that scene. So it has
Oh.
been written, at least in some form. And yes, I would love to see it. I have
Oh.
so I do toy photography, and one of my first photos that ever got a lot of attention was I did at that scene. I did them meeting, and they were around a.
Campfire or
It was
something?
basically around a campfire. They were
Yeah.
like in kind of they were in like some ruins, I think,
Uh-huh.
and it was Captain Rex, Ahsoka, and Luke, and then R2 was playing a hologram of Anakin during the Clone Wars. But I had them posed so like Rex was like telling a story, you know, and Ahsoka was just
Yeah.
smiling, and so was Luke. I'm like, gosh, that'd be awesome, because I think that Luke probably wouldn't know who Ahsoka was, but Ahsoka
Mm-mm.
would definitely know who Luke was by that time, because
Yeah.
the original trilogy has happened. There's no way she didn't hear his name, uh, which is also fascinating. Why she, I think that that's an interesting question too. Is why doesn't Luke or Ahsoka approach Luke sooner? I think some of that was indirectly answered by the show. You know that her trauma with Anakin, like she couldn't
Yeah.
face it.
Yeah.
And so I also have this little fanfic idea, which
Mhm.
is a little cringe. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, I think it's fun. Where maybe Ahsoka does want to approach Luke, like maybe she hears his name and is like, "Oh, this is it. This is our opportunity."
Yeah.
And I have this idea where like Yoda would reach out to her, kind of like he does with Ezra.
Uh-huh.
And Yoda's like, "Hey, the time of the Jedi being warriors and in the war that's over. The only person who can stop this is Luke. You need to like we have to just wait. We have to stay out of it." Because
Yeah.
that was ultimately what Yoda learned with the Clone Wars, right? Is like they needed to take a passive stance, and that is his lesson to Luke in Empire Strikes Back. So that's just my I don't know
Yeah.
just something I think about is like, yeah, that would be neat if Ahsoka. I feel like Ahsoka would be very headstrong because that's the character she is in Rebels.
Yeah.
But there's also maybe the trauma was so deep that she, even hearing about Luke, made her go further into exile, which she wasn't really in exile in the same way that Yoda and Obi-Wan were.
Yeah.
She was Ronaning, you know. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Man,
but yeah, top of my wish list, man. Top.
hopefully we get that, man. Like, if I ever run into Dave Filoni anywhere, that's the first question I'm gonna ask him. Like, how did Luke and Ahsoka meet? Just man, hopefully we
Yep.
get it, man.
Hey, maybe
That
Tales of the Jedi season 2. You
that
know he loves his girl, so
that would be awesome. If not, the only other time where it would make sense could be like in an Ahsoka season 2 and like some sort of flashback or something.
I
But
could see that. I could see that in Ahsoka season 2, because I mean, you got to rope Luke into that story at some point. Not necessarily Ahsoka, but you have to wrap into the Heir to the Empire story.
yeah,
Like you've already the cat's out of the bag. You brought him in already, so he's there. So I could see that in like an Ahsoka season 2, if she's going to get involved and she wants to go talk to Luke. That would be a nice cold open to the episode, like them meeting. So maybe it's a little bait and switch. Like you think that she's approaching, like you think that they already know each other because of Book of Boba Fett, but no, it's
yeah.
a flashback. They're meeting each other for the first time. Uh,
I think actually, now that I think about it, I think Dave, if would save that moment for the movie. Like the Filoni movie, what if it is an Heir to the Empire movie, and if Luke is in it, how insane would that be? The big screen, seeing Luke and Ahsoka meet for the first time in a movie. Wow.
I would pass away peacefully. Is what No, that would be cool.
Oh man.
It'd be awesome. It'd be awesome. I think we'll get that story eventually. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of when and in what medium.
Yeah, for
So
sure. So we've
it
been
would
talking
be
about no,
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
I just final note, I was just gonna say it would be kind of cool to see it in like a Tales of the Jedi, just because it would be neat to see Luke in a Clone Wars style animation
Oh,
and bring
you're
Mark Hamill back to
right.
voice. And
Oh.
I don't know. I mean, I would like it in live action too, but I would also I'll take it in any form, just not a comic book. I like comics, but like that's too big of a moment, you know.
It is, and, like, if it is Tales, that means we would get that next year because 'cause we're getting season 2, so
I would be surprised if we don't get Ahsoka content in Tales of the Jedi season 2. Maybe not, because he put her story in season 1. Maybe he could govern himself, but Dave likes Ahsoka. He
yeah,
fits.
he does, and he has more power now, so he can really do what he wants,
That's
hopefully, and
true.
nobody can, change it,
Yeah.
so we'll see how much power he really does have, but no, what I was gonna say was, we were talking about Luke for a while, we could probably talk all day about Luke,
We
but
could, yeah.
the next thing I wanna kinda talk about was your podcast, your show, Beyond the Dune Sea. So, like, how did that start? Who kinda pushed it to start? And, just tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so Seth is the other half of Beyond the Dune Sea. We became friends a few years ago at a local toy store. We know the owner. I've been friends with him for a little bit, and I've done some work. I've made a commercial for him and did some other things for
Mhm,
him. And so I would always see Seth in this store when I was there. And I have been doing video production for about 10 years at this point, which is crazy to think about. Um, Narrative filmmaking, documentary filmmaking, commercials, that sort of stuff. Um, and it turned out that Seth had also done a lot of that stuff too.
yeah.
He's just a little bit older than me. And so we kind of, and that were the initial conversations, was like, wow, this is so weird. You have the same story. Like, I made uh, a DC Comics fan series. It was like
Uh-huh.
a big endeavor. And I was telling Mike about that. He's the store owner. And Seth was like, I also made something like that. And it was so funny because he was showing it to me. And I had just recently moved to this town.
Uh-huh.
Well, I guess I'd been there for a few years, but he grew up here, and he was showing me his, and it was like he filmed in the same place as I did. It was very weird. It was like it was the
Wow.
same story, di- but several years apart. It was so odd. So we would constantly talk, and by this point, I was sort of tapering off my filmmaking journey,
Mhm.
just because filmmaking is hard, and it wasn't so much the difficulty of making films. Uh, it was the difficulty of finding sort of my place in all of it, if that made sense. I knew what I
Mhm.
was good at, but I was also like, nothing was ever going anywhere, if that makes sense. And it was a frustrating time, because I was like, I feel like I'm doing a good job, but no one cares. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And so I was like, well, I gave it my all.
Mhm.
And I started to sort of taper it off. And then I got into the toy photography as a way to scratch the creative itch, because if you're a creative person, like, you just can't turn that off.
Yeah.
So during this time, Seth would often come over and take photos with me. We started to become more and more friends, and he would constantly pester me about going and filming something. Oh, we should do this skit idea. And I was at a point where I'm like, if I'm going to make something, I don't want it to just be something goofy. I want it to have meaning, or, some
Yeah.
purpose behind it. And, but I mean, a couple years of this kept getting on me. And finally, earlier this year, I was like, fine, because I have a rule with all of my friends with,
Fine.
right. I know. I have a rule with I have a lot of friends who I would make films with and
Uh-huh.
do projects with. And I have a rule for them that's like, I will make a project, I will produce it if you write it,
Mhm.
because I don't like writing. It's not well, I've become good at it by nature of necessity, because I
Mhm.
ended up always having to be the one who would write, because it was unrealistic for me to expect anybody else to do it, because if you're not good at writing, you're not good at writing, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the people I worked with, their talents were in a lot of other areas where it was like acting or animation or things like that. But I always told them, if you had a specific idea and you write it, I will produce it. And I told Seth this for a long time. He never wrote anything, but he would keep getting on me. So finally, I had an idea earlier this year. I know this is long winded. I'm a
No, you're
wordy
good.
person. I apologize. Earlier this year, I had a fixation with making a live action anime.
Uh-huh.
I'd seen some videos by Corridor and some other things, and I was like, man, this just seems really. I feel like I could do this. Like, I feel like I could make this. So I wrote just this real simple script called Tic Tac KO. And it's just about tic tac toe, and it evolves into this like ridiculous anime fight.
Uh-huh.
And I pitched it to Seth, and he's like, let's do it. And I was like, okay. And I gave him some responsibilities. And I was like, I remember telling my wife, I'm like, this is either going to relight the spark or it's going to kill it completely. Because if I'd worked with a lot of people who would say they would do things and then wouldn't do them, or it would always fall back on me. And I was very jaded. We got to the shoot. Seth went above and beyond, like no one else I'd ever worked with. And it was a really fun shoot. I've not finished that film. And to be honest, like, I will finish it, but like, I don't care if I do, because
Mhm.
it did relight the spark.
Yeah.
And we also, around this time, were talking about doing a show of some kind, because I was going to make my own YouTube channel. I was going to do it about photography and things. And I was like, it would be fun as a little side quest with that. We could talk about Star Wars or something. We could talk about movies, because we enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
And usually he would call me after every new Star Wars episode would come out, for Mandalorian, for Book of Boba Fett, for whatever.
Yeah.
I could expect within 15 minutes I'd get a phone call, and we'd be talking for like an hour. And so we are like, yeah, we could try it. We could try doing a podcast or something. But in my mind, I didn't want to do just a podcast. I was like, I want to use these skills that I've accumulated over the years, and I want to do a show. I want to do a production of some kind. And so it was always in the cards, or like, we wanted to have skits that we do, have segments, eventually have guests on, all of these things. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And he was day one. I mean, he's like, let's do it. Yeah, okay. But I'm like, okay, well, hold on. We got a lot of prep work we got to do. I don't know. And we set a hard date. We're like, why don't we just, when Ahsoka comes out, that'll be our first recording. Because I have a thing. It's like an OCD when it comes to a deadline.
Mhm.
If it's not arbitrary, I have to meet it. Like, I will bend over backwards to meet it. It is a compulsion of mine. It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
And that day kept approaching, and I was dragging my feet. I was like, man, I got stuff I got to get for this. I'm like, I don't know what we're doing for a set. I don't know. I don't know. But I have this wall that was in my studio that had kind of a lot of my collectibles on it for my toy photography. And I'm like, well, that kind of looks good. Maybe I'll throw some sound panels around it, and we'll just shoot around that. So I went on Facebook Marketplace. I found some like chairs. I bought a couple new microphones. Actually, Seth had this one. I bought a microphone, and we're like, all right, let's do it. And I dreaded it so much the night before. And we got there, and Seth is like, so excited. Let's do it. I can't wait. I can't wait for this. And we record, and I had a blast. I had so much fun. And I started to edit, and I'm like, I realized something when I was editing it, the first episode, which is funny enough because that episode never came out. We had technical issues because we recorded it the week before Ahsoka came out. And I was editing it. I'm like, I think there's something here. Like, I think we might be onto something. And I realized the reason for it was Seth. Like, I have these skills.
Mhm.
And I like that I have these skills. I'm proud of them. It's taken me a long time to build these skills. I have equipment that I've accumulated over the time. So Seth, like, Seth just has a pizzazz about him, a personality. I'm sure you
Yeah.
talked to him.
Yep.
And he brings out the best in whoever he's talking to. And he's also very energetic and
Yep.
positive. And, you know, you just, when you're talking to him, especially about Star Wars, because you can tell he's passionate about it, it just oozes out. And we posted those first couple episodes and we started to get traction, and that was wild to us. We were like, we set a goal of 500 subs for the first year. We'll see where it goes. If we hit that goal, then maybe it'll be something. Cause I do a lot of behind the scenes work, and I had a plan for how to do that. I'm like, I don't think this is all luck. You know, I think that if with my toy photography page, I did a decent job of growing it. It's not huge, but, you know, I have a okay following on there. And it's not really about the numbers. It's just like knowing that you can do that, right? That like if I it's not just like there's an algorithm to it. And if you understand the algorithm, you know, you can be successful. And so I was like, I kind of want to try it. I want to try those things. And it was like the Wonder Twins, you know, it was, that's really what it felt like. And it was just insane right away, the response that we were getting for the show. And we had on our 5th episode, we had a short, and it was on TikTok and on Instagram, just go viral. It's probably the one you saw.
Probably.
And we couldn't believe it. Like, we couldn't believe it. And the comments that really got us, that made us say, wow, we're doing something important. Like, it was important to us in the beginning. We set a goal that was like, we're going to be positive. We're going to do our best to be just a place for Star Wars that you can just sit back and you don't have to walk away from the conversation being like, man, that guy just attacked everything I love. Or I don't think that guy would like me very much if we ever met in person, because I felt that way when I've watched Star Wars content, you know, and I don't like that. And, you know, I don't love everything in Star Wars, but we've always tried our best to be like, hey, if you like a thing we don't like, that's great. That's great. You know, you have your own, everybody's got their own experiences, and we'll always invite you into the club. And that we kind of have become known for another one of our videos that went viral. That's Seth telling a story, and he kind of ends it saying, Star Wars is for everybody. And that's awesome. And it's like, we didn't realize how much the community needs positivity, because that's about the time we discovered you guys and Diamond Figs and Mortis FM, and you all have kind of the same idea.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, you know, we're just going to put out positivity, you know, we're just going to hang out and be positive in the fandom. And I think that that's something that people really craved. And yeah, so that's kind of the genesis of it. And that's it's just, we just feel so fortunate, and we feel so much gratitude for the friends we've made, for the fans we've made. Is just, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we're at like almost 1,400 subs, and it is like, what in the world, you know? And it's like, each one of those subs is a person, you know, who watched something we said and liked it enough to hit that button. And because I know me, I'm stingy with the subscribe button.
Me too.
Like I really have to like something to subscribe to it. And I think about each individual person who's done that. It's like, wow, that's nuts. That's just, it's hard to fathom, and it's hard to put into words really our gratitude, but it's it's been cool. And it's also afforded us the opportunity to just be creative, which I feel like I haven't been able to do in a long time. Like I mentioned, my spark for filmmaking kind of died, but now I get to make a little movie every week, and they're so goofy, and they're usually they're so dumb most of the time, you know, but it's super fun. It's a place to put it, you know, it has a purpose, and that's what's cool.
Yeah, it's so crazy, because I think when I first subscribed to you guys, it was like in the 300s, 400s, and then like by the time I knew it, like a few weeks later, it was like over 1,000. Like, it was quick. Like, your guys' growth is quick, and like you just said, you're almost at 1,400. So for this year, do you have any goals, like on how many subs you want to get?
To be honest with you, I don't. Seth and I kept having to like, again, I'm very analytical. So I look at everything like, when we first started, I was like starting to get an idea of like, okay, this is the growth we can expect. We were at most getting 7 subs a day, which is still a lot. Like
Yeah.
that's incredible. We never would have expected that, but that kind of became the norm. We're like, okay, we're getting 3 to 7 a day. So that was our goal. It's like, oh, and I mapped it out. I'm like, okay, for 3 to 7 a day, we'll hit 500 at this time. We'll hit
Yeah.
1,000 at this time. And that's how we'll know we'll be on track. And uh, we had a couple videos just go crazy. And it's like, I don't even know what goals to set
Yeah.
anymore. You know,
Yeah.
it's crazy. We have some goals behind the scenes of some things we want to do. Now that we've kind of figured out a formula, because we
Mhm.
didn't in the beginning, we were kind of just throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck.
Yeah.
And we invested a little bit into the set. It's now a little bit more user friendly is the best way to put it, but it also
Mhm.
looks a little bit better. The lighting's a little bit better. So we want to take that, and we have some ideas to grow the channel and hopefully make content people want to see. You know, we don't just want to make content for the sake of making content. We always want to make sure that everything we're putting out is something that's interesting, hopefully something that's fresh in some way.
Yeah.
And so, but as far as numbers go, I have no idea. I have no idea the goal to set. 5K, I guess. Maybe
Yeah.
that's crazy. I don't know.
No, I think you'll get that easily. I think you guys will be more than that by the end of this year at the rate you're going with like the consistency you guys put out and the quality, especially those short films like the one I just saw today, the day that we're recording. The Home Alone skit was just oh my god, so
Man,
good. I was telling Seth earlier, I think my favorite one was the one where Seth was Darth Maul. 'Cause
Darth
I
Maul. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that was my favorite one, but, like, those
So
those clips are just the best, man. I know a
the
lot goes into it.
yeah, the escalation of those has been insane because it was always in the cards to do some sort of skit. Like that was the plan
Yeah,
from the beginning. We were like, okay, let's get our bearings and we'll do that. The first one we did was we never intended them to be little short films. If we did a skit, it was going to be like something funny that we did while we were sitting down in our chairs.
yeah,
And so the first one we did was when it was the end. Uh, yeah, it was the finale. It was the Ahsoka finale, and I act like, okay, Seth's not here, so I guess it's just me. I'm going solo, and then he appears as a Force
Force
ghost. He's like,
Ghost,
I
yes.
don't know what happened. I was 1 minute I was here, now I'm here. And I'm like, I think you died. And he's like, I don't know, man. It is just, and people loved that, and we're like, okay. And then the next week we were like, okay, we got to do something fun, and so we were doing the Mortis arc, and I did this thing where I like where Seth said he didn't like Clone Wars, and so I like force pull a lightsaber and I act like I'm gonna cut him down, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
But then it was the tier list that really blew it out of proportion because I have always had this idea with the toy photography I do. I have a lot of dioramas
Uh-huh.
that I've collected, and I've always had this idea like, could I shoot live action like people on green screens and put them into these diorama sets and like could is that possible? Like, would that even look good? I don't know. And so I had just an epiphany one day, and I texted Seth because I wrote it all out, the entire skit, because it's
Mhm.
basically a riff on Obi-Wan and Anakin's conversation in Revenge of the Sith, right before they duel. And he's a big fan of Return of the Jedi, and I am too, but not as much as he is.
Yeah.
And I had this line pop in my head, like, "You've allowed the Ewoks to twist your mind until now." And I had that stupid idea, and I wrote a whole skit around it, and I sent it to him, and he's like, "That's insane. How are we even gonna do that?" And I'm like, "I have this idea to do these on these miniature sets. I don't know if it'll work, but we should try it." And he's like, "Let's do it." So he actually bought the green screen. He bought a green screen, and we came over, and I'm like, I don't know if this is gonna work. And so we shot everything on the green screen.
Mhm.
And then I came into my photography studio and I set up this scene and I literally used the figures of Obi-Wan and Anakin like as
Yeah.
placeholders, and I was like matching all the shots. And then I started pulling them in and combining them. I'm like, holy crap, I think this is gonna work. Like it's not like movie quality, you know, like it's not gonna sell that, but for a goofy skit in the beginning of a podcast, like
Oh, so good.
and so, yeah, And so then every week we did that, and a lot of people loved it so much. We're like, well, now we can't go back. So now every week we got to do
Yeah.
something. The Home Alone one was fun because that was Seth's idea. He was really adamant about it.
Yeah.
I'll share with you the other idea that I had because I think you'll really enjoy it.
Uh-huh.
The idea I had, because we knew we were doing Christmas, and we're like, okay, we got to go all out for this one. The scene in A Christmas Story
Uh-huh.
when Ralphie opens up the bunny costume, and then it cuts to Ralphie walking down the stairs, and he's in the bunny costume. I wanted to do that scene, but with Jackson the rabbit. It's
Oh, that would have been hilarious.
Seth hates Jackson the rabbit, and I think he's
Yeah.
awesome. So he would open up the costume and then walk down the stairs, and he's in a
Wearing it.
Jackson the rabbit costume.
Oh, that would have been golden. Oh man.
So that was, but we couldn't figure out how to get a costume in time. So Seth was really adamant about Home Alone, and there was a few
Yeah.
scenes we were bouncing around, and we ultimately landed on the brick scene. He was like, I just think it'd be so funny if Grogu was Kevin, and he's like running around the house, or he's like, or we could do this scene where he's throwing
Yeah.
bricks at him. I'm like, okay, we'll do that. And we actually went out and filmed it on location, not on a green screen, so that was fun.
Man, so good, man. So I think the next thing I kind of want to talk a little bit about is collectibles because I see your deets off there full of hot toys. So what kind
Yeah.
of goodies are you into?
So when it comes to Star Wars collectibles, like figures in particular, I mainly get them for the photography. So
Mm-hmm.
90% of them are like, if they outlive their usefulness, like if I run out of photo ideas, I'll sell them because I'm like, well, yeah, that's the only reason they're here. Except
Mm-hmm.
for Captain Rex there. He'll never leave. I wanted
Yes.
that one so bad. And yeah, so I do a lot of figures, customs. I'm really into customs,
Mm-hmm.
like for Black Series figures. A lot of custom heads and stuff. Like I've got this one's within reach. This is from his lightsaber's falling out. Yeah, just take his lightsaber out. So this is from. Oh, I just tried to show my webcam. Jeez. Yeah. So this is from Revenge of the Sith. It's a guy named Uncle Sam Cantina, and
Uh-huh.
I weathered the Black Series figure. So that kind of stuff, because they really pop in photos, and you can make
Yeah.
some pretty cool art with them. And so I love that kind of thing. I've recently been more into collecting like the physical media for Star Wars because I'm a big
Oh.
physical game collector, but
Uh-huh.
I just had the Blu-rays for Star Wars, and I kind of got rid of everything else. But recently, these were the covers I grew up with for Star Wars, and
Mm.
I just finished the set. I got Gendy's Clone Wars Volume 1 and 2 on DVD. Ships, I'm really into ships. So the Micro Galaxy Squadron is really cool. I've
Yep.
really been enjoying their stuff. Like they're really well priced and pretty accurate. So yeah, that's kind of the things that I like. Yeah.
Nice, nice. It's a
Uh,
good variety. I love the physical media thing too because I think I have everything on DVD, but like if I see it somewhere, I'll buy it. Especially like VHSs, man. I'm a sucker for
yeah.
VHSs. If I'm at a like a convention or a toy show and I'll see like the gold box set or the original box set, I'm
Yep.
picking it up because
I,
a
I
lot of
just
times they're
recently
cheap.
I just recently picked up that gold box set sealed from Toys R Us.
Oh, that's so dope,
It was
man.
$15. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, you
I
can't.
don't think they're that expensive, but it
Yeah.
was just cool to see it sealed. So I was like, all right, yeah, I'll pick that up. But yeah, that and the Star Wars games too are a big thing that I like to collect. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Like I do like lightsabers, although I don't
Mhm.
have many. I have an Ultra Sabers Anakin Graflex lightsaber that I love. I got that at Chicago Comic-Con several years ago. But yeah, the Hot Toys Black Series, some vintage collection. I don't do a ton of 3 3/4, although that was like my bread and butter when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
um, I'd like to get into the helmets. I love seeing those in the background of your videos. I don't have any helmets, but I would like to start. Captain Rex will probably be the first one I get.
So his is
Um,
coming out next year from Hasbro, but there's other like custom ones out you could get right now. But
I know, and they look good too. Yeah. Main thing for me is like, I don't know where I'd put them.
Yeah, like you need space, and like my shelf back here is full. Like I have the Bo-Katan one, I had to put it on the floor over there. I think I have another one somewhere else. So like I ran out of space, so I need to go to IKEA and get like an extension to that or something because they add up really, really quick, man.
Yeah,
Really
they do.
fast.
Yeah, they
So
do. I
yeah.
was like looking around. I'm like, do I have anything else? I don't think so. I think that's the main thing that I do. Um, but yeah, I've always loved the toys. You know, when I was growing up, that was a big thing. My mom and my mama would always take me. We'd go on toy hunts. It was a lot of fun. The
Nice.
old 3 3/4. I have a couple Kinners. I think I have the Return of the Jedi, Luke Skywalker Kinner figure. And some of the old Power of the Force. Power of the Force was when I was a kid, but I wasn't into Star Wars at the time, so
Mhm.
I didn't really get a ton of Power of the Force. I do have some. I have some sealed Power of the Force um, that I've gotten over the years. But yeah, I kind of like weird stuff. Like when I say weird stuff, like uncommon, I guess, Star Wars stuff. That's kind of what I like to gravitate towards. So like I could see it over there. I have a little music box that
Uh-huh.
plays the Star Wars theme. Like that kind of stuff is cool. I had these old. I know you talked about them not long ago. Those Unleashed figures. I have the miniature version of
Yes.
those. Those things are
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah, I'm with you with collecting weird random stuff. I'm gonna show you something right now that's very weird and very random. I gotta grab
Okay,
this.
I'm ready. Trying to like get a sneak preview here. Like, what am I looking for? Hey, there's a lot of cool stuff back there.
All right, so I'm a big Darth Maul guy, and I love
Hmm.
sealed 1999 Episode One merch. Like that's probably like one of my favorite merch lines ever. But
Okay.
I saw this, I had to get it, and like I don't really live anywhere where there's snow. I'm in Florida, so it's not really useful here. But this is a Darth Maul snow tube.
Well, how about that? That is so interesting.
Yeah,
That
like
is so weird. Yeah,
it
like that's
is.
the kind of stuff right there.
Yeah, I guess I could use it in the pool, but I want to go somewhere like New York, New Jersey, Colorado snowboarding, and I want to be like this kid right here, going down the slopes with this and probably holding Darth Maul's lightsaber. Like, how funny would that be? A
That's
clip of
awesome.
me doing that.
New
Yeah,
profile pic incoming.
yeah. So I love the random stuff like this.
Yeah,
It's
that's
it's the
cool, man.
best. It is
Yeah,
the
so
best.
so Darth Maul's your guy, huh? Which I knew that, but like
Yeah,
you have a lot of Darth Maul stuff.
I
That's
do.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't really have a character. I kind of Captain Rex.
Mm,
I just love Captain Rex. I think his helmet is so cool.
it is.
So that's one thing. Like I have this. Let's see if I can reach it. It's not very good because I customized this myself. But this custom Black Series one with a more accurate helmet.
Oh, okay, nice.
The helmet sculpt is great, and from a distance, hopefully you can't see all the imperfections in the paint job. But
No, yeah, I can't see it from that far.
but yeah, just so Captain Rex is one of the characters that I like to go for.
So you mentioned before you collecting games. So like I kind of know you're into retro gaming. So like
I am.
what kind of stuff do you collect? Like what consoles? Like what's your retro gaming taste?
So sorry, Obi-Wan just took a tumble there. So with retro games, that's right here. That's what
Yeah.
I like to collect. Like I always tell people, figures, that's for my photography. If I had to get rid of them all, I would probably, or most of them. I have a few sentimental ones, but retro games though, that's that's where I get the thrill of the hunt. That's where I get
Yeah.
all of that stuff. So I collect. What don't I collect is a better. So we just recently finished our Nintendo console. So we have all Nintendo consoles with the exception of the Virtual Boy, if you
Uh-huh.
count that.
Yeah.
um, so I like collecting consoles.
Hmm.
I'm also a big Game Boy collector.
Do you
Like
have every
Game
Game
Boys,
Boy
I
console?
have them all with the exception of the Game Boy Light, which was it came out in I believe 1998 at the same time of the Game Boy Color. It was released only in Japan,
Yep.
but it still had all English text and stuff, and it was a front lit Game Boy before the SP,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
the only front lit Game Boy. And it's the one that got away because I have a prominent memory of I've only seen one once in person, and it was $40. And I was like,
What?
I'll find one cheaper another time. What a fool I was.
Wow. Yeah, because I didn't really know much about it, but I researched it recently since I'm going to Japan, and I've been watching a lot of retro game hunt videos out there. They're everywhere over there.
I know.
So, like,
Oh,
when I go, that's number 1 on my list, and I know you mentioned you'd like to go to Japan, but if you don't get to go, I could grab one for you, man.
dude, I would.
Yeah.
It'd be so awesome. They are it's the only one I have, of course, the original brick. I have several Game Boy Pockets. I'm also into modding them, so I have usually if I have several, I've modded
Nice.
one and I have an original.
Yeah.
So I have a few Game Boy Pockets, one's modded. I have my original Game Boy Color, because that was the first one
Mm,
I got. And then I have a custom Game Boy Color that I had. It's got a custom skin on it.
mhm.
Uh, and like it's got a Mewtwo skin on it. It's got light up buttons. It's got a touch thing on the top.
Ooh.
Do you want me to go get some of these?
Yes,
Because they're just
yes, yes,
downstairs.
yes,
I'll be right
yes.
back. I can go get a
Go.
couple of them.
Yes, yes.
Okay. I've only grabbed a couple.
Ooh.
So, all right. I'll try to make this as not boring as possible.
Oh, no, this is great. Take your time. No, I wanna see this.
So I just grabbed some of my Game Boys because, like I said, that's kind of my thing. So this is my modded pocket that I made,
Oh, it
uh,
looks like the
all white.
OG. Yeah.
Yeah, all white. And then here, let's see. I'll grab a Game Boy game, throw it in there. This was back. If you're into modding at all,
I know
um,
nothing about it, but I wanna learn.
you're not gonna be able to see it on camera. So back in the day, not I guess not long ago, the only way you could put a backlit screen on a pocket was by taking out the screen and then carefully removing the polarizer on the back. It was
Mhm.
a very difficult process, and a lot of you could ruin the screen really
Yeah.
easily. So now you can just get drop-in screens, some IPS screens. So this one looks like the batteries are getting low, so you can't really tell that it's backlit, but of course you can hear it. And I put Link's Awakening in there.
Ooh.
So so that's one, all white. I love that, and always making sure I put the OEM stickers so it looks
Yeah.
real. Like I love that. Um, here's my Game Boy Color, my modded one. So I'll go ahead and put Link's Awakening in that too. I should have brought a Pokemon game, but there's a
Oh, the
and
Mewtwo.
backlit. And check this out, just a touch brightness control.
Wow.
And then this is a relatively new feature. The buttons light up.
Wow. And you did all that yourself?
Yes. Well, that's so it's a lot of this stuff they make really easy to do, but it's
Uh-huh.
also that's what I have a degree in electrical
Yeah.
engineering. So like this is what I not that you need that to do this, but it does help to do some of the more intricate stuff.
Uh-huh.
Like for example, it's a small thing, but it is so great. Um, where's my yeah? So you see the power LED.
Yeah.
So on a Game Boy Color, it just lights up red when you have the power on. Well, I wanted to know when the batteries were getting low. So I had this custom board made by, I think the guy's name is Froggo Customs.
Uh-huh.
And it's purple on theme, but then it will go orange when the batteries get low. So
Wow.
it's a custom, it's a flex PCB that goes on the actual board. It gets soldered onto the actual board. And then the buttons, the LEDs on the buttons, I have an issue where sometimes LEDs really bother my eyes.
Mhm.
So I wanted it to be toggleable. So I have a switch down here where you can turn, like if I want to sit here and play it, I
Yeah.
can turn the LEDs off. So yeah, this thing, super cool.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite builds. Here is one of my GBA SPs. My special one is actually up here somewhere because I
The
talked about it on the show.
Yeah, the blue one, right? The blue purple one?
The blue one. So this
Yeah.
one is an AGS 101.
Uh-huh.
It's got the backlit screen. Super bright. Love these things. This was actually just given to me by a coworker not long ago. It was
Wow.
crazy because I was actually working because at work I have a lot of stuff, like all my electrical tools. So I was doing a lot
Hmm.
of my modding after I got off, and a coworker walked by and was like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, this is a hobby of mine." And the next day, she brought in just a case that had this and a bunch of games in it. She was like, "Here, just have it.
Wow.
Just been sitting in a closet." I'm like, "Okay."
Thanks. Yeah, that's so cool.
And then okay, so then this one is my modded SP. It's just,
Ooh.
and this is not an original shell. So
Yeah.
this is a real thing, but you could only get one of these shells, like this special edition with a frontlit screen, but this has the backlit screen, and it's just really
Mm.
nice. Um, so I need to get stickers for it because it doesn't have stickers. And then here we go, the Game Boy Micro.
Oh, I want one of
This
those things.
has this has a custom machined aluminum shell on it with a custom faceplate from, I don't remember where it's from.
Hmm.
I actually want to put the original back on it, the original shell, because I like it a little bit more. But so that's one. These things, gosh, they're hard to find, micros.
Yeah.
Uh, but then the best one is the Japan exclusive
Oh,
20th anniversary of Mario, complete inbox Famicom edition of the
wow.
Game Boy Micro. And this one's cool because there were other Famicom editions, but not
Uh-huh.
all of them had the little Mario on the back. And that's actually
Wow.
engraved, like it's etched into the metal. So
Where'd you get that from?
this is funny. This was when I worked for a video game startup for a little while,
Uh-huh.
and we had a massive deadline that we had to meet, and I was the team lead for the animation team. And my boss, the game director, he was also into retro games, and
Hmm.
he knew that this was like one of my holy grails. And he told me, he was like, if you meet this deadline, I will I will purchase you one of those. And I was like,
Wow.
okay. I didn't meet the deadline because it was
Mm.
it was an impossible deadline. It was just not feasible.
Yeah.
And I think he realized that because I remember right after that month, I came into work and this was just sitting on my desk. Uh, so really cool. Very
That is awesome. I've seen a bunch of those in those Japan videos I've been watching because there's a chain store in Japan called Hard Off,
hard
and it's
off. Yep.
it's a, it says like a secondhand electronics store where people buy, sell, trade their old electronics. So I literally have a map of about 15 to 20 different hard offs. There's another chain called Book Off and Hobby Off, which is kind of the same thing, and they have electronics. And there's a store called Suragaya. So all these electronic stores, there's probably about 30 of them total I'm going to go to. I think I'm more excited to go on the retro game hunt than I am for Celebration Japan because
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
it is, but for me, it's the nostalgia and the childhood stuff. Cause like everything I had as a kid is just sitting in bins over there for dirt cheap. The pricing on
Hmm.
this stuff, and like now that I know you can like mod and kind of repair stuff, a lot of those places have broken Game Boys that are dirt cheap. Honestly, I'm probably gonna buy them all and be like, "Hey, let's figure it out." And
Hey,
I
yeah.
and because like
Hey, it's one of my favorite things to do is fix Game Boys because most of the time, like 75% of the time, they just need cleaned. Like the boards
yeah,
just need cleaned because they get just gunk inside the power switches and stuff because they use these slider switches, and or there's corrosion on the battery contacts, and it's
yeah.
like, but that's the boring stuff. I I could talk about that stuff all the time, but yeah, no, I hear you, man. I'd love to go over there and just dive into those bins because there's uh so many systems that I would like to. I would just like to have a reserve of a bunch of Game Boys for parts and stuff.
Yes.
So yeah, I definitely
Yes.
hear that.
So now that I know that, because like I wasn't gonna buy a lot of broken consoles because I can't really do nothing with it. But if I'm finding Game Boys for like $5,
Yeah.
I'll buy 30 of them, and then
Right.
we'll figure it out. Because like, when am I ever gonna be able to buy consoles for that cheap? And I kind of made a crazy list. So when I go, I want to get a like the Japanese Famicom. I want to get the Super Famicom. I wanna get at least 2 or 3 of the Japan N64s, like the clear colored ones, like the blue
Oh
one,
yeah.
the orange
The
one, the
Fantastics.
yeah, I wanna get at least a couple of those. I want to pick up a GameCube. I want the what is it? The Spice Orange is the Japanese exclusive
Yes.
one. I want to get that. And then Game Boys is where I'm in trouble because I kind of want to get one of every Game Boy, but the Game Boy Color, I want the Toys R Us Tiffany color Japan exclusive one. I
Oh.
want that. Yeah, I want that one. And then I want to get a light. I don't care if it's the silver or the gold version. I just want to find a light that works. And
That's the big thing. Like if you're gonna get broken consoles, yeah, those are really great because you can just do drop-ins and stuff. But if you want to
mhm.
get like special editions and stuff, man, like with the pockets, the pocket, the light. I don't know if the light has this issue, but I know the pocket and the Game Boy they have something called screen cancer. Have you ever seen that?
Where
Something
like
to watch out for.
it's like the screen kind of like burns in, it looks like, or is it?
No, it's like on the edges. You can see like this black
Oh,
kind of seeping in,
uh-uh.
and like that's yeah, it's one of those things. I think it's technically repairable, but it's a nightmare. So it's not worth it. So that's the only thing I would say
Oh,
look out for.
I'll keep an eye out for that. But
Yeah.
so there's a bunch of consoles I want to get handheld and then the main consoles. But I also, and I made this list earlier today. I have a list of 100 video games I want to buy while I'm out there, which sounds
Oh,
crazy, but like it's also going to be a very cool video. Hey, I bought 100 Nintendo games in Japan and like a
yeah. I
crazy
mean, there you
thumbnail.
go. Banger title.
But all of them, so I literally went through every console I had as a kid, like the list of every game ever, and I looked, and I want to get every game I ever had as a kid on NES, on Super Nintendo, on 64, on GameCube, on Game Boy, on Game Boy Color. So I went through the list, and it's about 100 games. But like a lot of these games, I'm seeing in these videos in these bins for like $2, $3, $4, $5. They're really, really cheap. And like if I were to try to get a lot of this stuff now in the US at the prices now, it'd be crazy. So
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, that's the case. They are starting to come down. I will say a little bit.
a little bit, but not like these
Yeah,
Japan
not a lot.
prices. Another big piece of hardware I'm gonna get, and like I just hope my luggage is big enough to fit the box because I see them at hard offs in the box all the time. Is remember the Super Scope?
Of course.
$18 over there in the box for a
In the
Super
box,
Scope.
yeah. See,
That's
that's the stuff
crazy.
that I would be really intrigued by over there is a lot of the CIB stuff because you
Yeah.
don't see a ton of that stuff here.
No. So it's gonna be very fun and interesting over there. And hopefully you can make it. But if not, like give me a list of like your Japan grails and I
All
got
right.
you.
Hey,
Cause
I'm gonna take you up on that
no,
because I got some.
I start making that list now. That way I can add it to my list. Like I'm for real. Cause like I even like I kind of had an idea of where the hotels were that I was gonna stay at originally. But now that I found all these stores, I'm tweaking all my hotels. That way they're in walking distance to a couple of these stores. Cause our plan is as soon as we land the first day in Tokyo, we're gonna go to the hotel, drop the luggage off, and go right to hard off right away. Cause like I want to pick up something instantly because I just have the itch for the hunt.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. That's been a dream of mine too, and that's part of the reason I've been thinking about really going. Uh, yeah, so it's my biggest thing is I announced on the show today, but I'm my first child is due this spring, and
Congratulations.
thank you. And I was looking and I'm like, wow, that due date is real close. And obviously it's next year, but I'm like, there's no
Yeah.
way I'm going to miss my child's first birthday to go to celebration. So
Oh,
that's that's the
yeah.
big thing is like I'm waiting. I'm like, okay,
Oh,
we'll see
depending.
how it shakes.
Yeah.
But that's really my only
Wow.
reservation to go right now.
That yeah, that makes sense. That makes complete sense.
But if so, I'm going to be hitting you up. I'm going to be like, hey,
Oh no, man. I so it's so funny. Like I already have like about 30 videos I want to record while I'm in Japan for the 11 days between both channels, between the Star Wars Sith channel and the Hyrule Sith channel, because there's just a lot of like video game stuff out there. I mean, it's Japan, it's the motherland.
right. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly. It's the
Yeah.
genesis of all of it.
And
So
if
do you collect? So you're going to be collecting for like the games you had when you were a kid. So you don't have like specific series that you're going after in particular.
so I'm gonna get all the games I had as a kid, but I'm also gonna buy pretty much every Zelda game that I see, no matter what, whether I had it or not. I want to get every Game Boy Pokemon game. So red, blue, yellow, green, gold, silver, and I think emerald were all on the cartridge, not
Yes.
including the advanced ones. So I want all those Pokemon games and then every Star Wars game. So there's a lot of Star Wars games on like
Right.
consoles that I never knew existed. Like there were a couple of new ones I saw. Like Yoda had a Game Boy Color game. There was an
Yeah, check out
Obi-Wan.
this one. I just picked this one up. Star Wars Racer
That's on the
for
list.
the
That's on my list. Yep.
GBC.
Yep, that's on my list. So I'll be doing a lot of that stuff, but Zelda is my biggest one. I'm gonna get everything Zelda, and Zelda will probably be the only one where I buy the Nintendo Switch version just to have the Japanese cover of Tears
Oh,
and Breath of the
cool.
Wild. But you're pretty big on Zelda too, eh?
Yeah, so we collect, I should say we, it's mostly me. My wife enjoys video games as well, but I do mainly series. So I do the Pokemon series, Legend of Zelda, a
Nice.
little bit of Mario. I'm not quite a completionist on Mario,
Yeah,
but I am on the other series, and then Star Wars games. Mostly Star Wars
nice.
handheld games. That's kind of the idea. So for Pokemon, I just actually completed that milestone. I'm only missing Ultra Moon, and I'm just not in a hurry to get it quite yet. But
Yeah.
I did get the entire DS library, and I've had the entire Game Boy library. And I finished the Game Boy library just before COVID hit. So I
Mhm.
was able, like, I bought Emerald for $20, which is wild because that game is
Nice.
expensive now.
Yeah.
But yeah, but the DS games, gosh, they are not cheap. So
No. Uh-uh.
I paid up for a couple of those, which hurt my soul a little bit because I'm a
Yeah.
bargain hunter, so
Me
I'm
too.
always
Yeah.
looking. But I did end up, it was Black 2 was my last one, and that game's like $150. And I found one for 115. And I'm like, well, I'm probably not gonna find any cheaper, so I'll grab that. But Zelda, I'm only missing the Game Boy Advance games, and it's really sad because I bought them first, but they ended up being fake.
Oh,
And I didn't know that until years later because now I can spot fakes from a mile away.
yeah.
But uh, since they were the first ones I ever bought, I just never considered it. It was
Mhm.
actually at a game store with a friend of mine, and we saw the Minish Cap, which is for Game Boy Advance, and
Yeah.
it was $80. And I was like, I told my friend, I'm like, $80. Like, I bought this game for 20 with Link to the Past 4 Swords. And then it hit me. And I'm like, oh man, I bought a
Oh.
fake. And I said that, and it was funny. An employee overheard me. He thought I was talking about the game in the cabinet. He's like, no, 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 that's not fake. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, not yours, mine. Unfortunately, I went home and I took it. I have a tri-wing screwdriver, popped it
Yeah.
open. I'm like, sure enough, they're fake. I'm like, dang. So
Wow.
that's the only ones I'm missing now. I'm missing Minish Cap, Link to the Past for GBA, and then the two NES classics for GBA. But I have the rest of them.
So yours, it's all the US versions, right?
Yes.
So like for Japan, would you try to like get every version of it in Japanese or just select ones? Because that's a
So,
dangerous rabbit hole too.
yeah, select ones. I've thought about this because I have run into Japanese versions at
Uh-huh.
game stores and stuff before. I think I would enjoy having the Game Boy Advance Pokemon games,
Mhm.
the Japanese versions, because I love the box art. And
Yeah.
they're not too expensive in box. You can find them for like $40, I think.
Mhm.
Which for Pokemon, it's super cheap.
Yeah.
So I would probably like that, but I'm not a big foreign game collector.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't mind it for the consoles because most of them aren't region locked.
Mhm.
But yeah, for the games, I like to stick to US version for the most part. So I don't know that I would find a ton of games over there, but consoles, man, yeah, I'd be all and accessories too, like the
Yeah.
weird stuff.
Oh,
Gosh,
so I'm in a couple of the videos I've been watching, they've been finding Game Boy cameras and Game Boy printers. So every Game Boy camera I'm picking up, I'm snagging. I had one when I was younger. I remember that terrible looking camera, but I want it
right?
for the nostalgia, like for sure. But yeah, I'm not a big Japanese collector either. But if I'm there and like freaking Wario Land is $1, I'm gonna buy it. Like that's just insane for like a memory of the trip, but just to have it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be wild, man. It's gonna be
So
very wild.
what Game Boy are you looking forward to the most? Like what's your Game Boy?
My Game Boy, like probably I grew up on the brick so much in the pocket and the color, but I think the color probably was my favorite. I had the clear
Mhm.
purple one, and I bought one
Common
maybe
purple.
yeah, I bought one maybe a year ago, so I have that now. So that would probably be my favorite. I never had the SP or the Advance, but I'm gonna pick them up while they're there. I do have an SP now because my younger brother gave me one, so I have an SP, and it's dope. It's crazy how it lights up. Like what? Back in the day, like especially like if I was playing in the car, I would try to be sitting by the light to get the street light coming in to be able to play.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Memories, man. I was the
the
same way.
struggles, but yeah, I wanna find all those wacky accessories like the light that would slide on top, the light with the little magnifying glass,
Oh,
remember
yeah,
that?
the worm lights and stuff. Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
and also I wanna find a Game Boy Game Genie because I remember I had that back in the day. I used that on Pokemon Blue to get Mew back in, like, the '90s. Oh,
Yeah, wow. That talk about memories, those and action replays, Game Sharks.
yeah, Game
I had
Shark,
I had
yes.
those too. Yeah. I mostly used mine on the DS era.
Okay.
Uh, do you remember those cheat code books that you could buy?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes. Oh,
yeah.
man.
Dude, I
What
had I had stacks of that stuff because I would get on
Mhm.
cheatcc.com,
Yeah,
and I had, like, a whole stack for GTA San Andreas that I would use, because I never played the story in that game. I just wanted a flying tank every time I played it.
yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah,
But
or, some of the Star Wars games, they had some pretty good cheats too. Battlefront 2. Yeah, they
mhm.
had I would always toggle on infinite hero tokens, and I would just play as the hero the entire time, like in Galactic Conquest.
Yeah, yeah.
Gosh, so many, yeah.
Yeah, so I have a feeling and I already know it. I know I'm probably gonna have to ship something back because I have a feeling I'm gonna have a full suitcase of just like Nintendo 64s and just GameCube, just a bunch of random consoles. And like whatever I buy at Celebration, I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna figure it out, but it's gonna
Yeah,
be.
right? Gotta bring an empty 2 empty suitcases,
I'm
sounds
bringing
like.
I'm bringing one empty suitcase for sure, and then I'm gonna bring an empty duffel bag. That way, on the way home, I could cram all the clothes into the duffel bag,
Oh,
and
there you
then
go.
yeah, I've been strategically planning this out because this it's kind of a once in a lifetime thing to be able to get all these games and consoles for this price. It's not like I'm gonna go to Japan all the time.
Right.
It's not cheap to fly there, but once you're there, it's everything is affordable. But
Yeah,
yeah, I'm taking advantage of this trip, man, and memory lane every day.
yeah. Man, now you're really making me wanna go. I hope it works out.
Yeah, I hope so too. When's the due date for the little one?
So our due date is May 7th, but it's close enough. It's like a
Ooh,
week, you know? So I'm like, you
yeah.
never know what can happen.
'Cause don't they usually come early? Like most of the time, these little kids come out early than the due date typically, or
Some
sometimes it's later.
sometimes,
Wow.
be my first, so I'm not,
What
don't
if
know what
it's
to
May the
expect.
4th?
Ma I didn't even consider that. That's a great
Wow.
gotta aim for
Wow.
that.
Yes, yes. Wow. That's crazy, man. Oh man. All right. So we went way longer than I thought.
Oh,
Um,
sorry, that's my fault. I talk so
no.
much.
Oh no, me too. Once we went down the rabbit hole with Luke and these video games, like we could probably still talk another hour about retro games,
We could.
but we'll probably wrap it up there. Do you have anything coming up next on your channel that the people could look forward to?
So we've got Tales from the Archives next week, of course, with you and with Diamond Figs and with Mortis FM.
Yep.
Uh, and then the week after that, we're going to do a look back at 2023, a look forward to 2024. And then the first retrospective we're doing is on Rogue One in the coming new
Nice.
year. We do have some other stuff in the pipeline, but not anything I can mention yet. So we're excited about
Nice.
that.
Yeah. So for you guys watching, be sure to check them out. I'm gonna put the link down in the description. Go subscribe now. Konnor, thank you again for coming on, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, man. It's been an honor to be on here, and you're just again, I am but the Padawan, and you are the master. So, yeah, no,
Uh,
it was an honor to come on. It's great chatting with you. Thanks for having me on.
of course. And that's it for this episode of Sith Talk, guys. We'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys.